Welcome to the Jiu Jitsu Oracle's Who's Number 124 preview, a show headlined by Gordon Ryan against Josh Saunders. I'm Ross. I'm joined, as always, by Calum and, once again, his computer screen, which is going to provide some helpful graphics along the way. So, Calum, we talked about this a little bit on the last pod when we covered Gordon Ryan's comeback. The main event, Gordon Ryan against Josh Saunders. Having had a little bit more time to think about it, do you have anything to add about how you think the match is going to go?
Not really. I mean, you sent me a post from Gordon advertising his new instructional, which is a front headlock instructional. So I've seen Gordon in the past use these Who's Number 1 matches against opponents that aren't really on his level to kind of showcase his skills in whatever DVD he's got coming out to advertise it a little bit. So you'd suggested maybe we're going to see a front headlock attack to finish the match. I think that's going to be potentially a bit harder of a submission to force than some of the other things he's done, like arm bars and triangles, which I think you can get from super dominant positions. But I think if you really don't want to get guillotined or front headlocked, it can be a bit more difficult to force. It's more of like a situational thing, perhaps. So maybe we see that. But as far as my overall perspective on the match between Gordon and Josh Saunders, I don't see it being overly competitive. We've seen some new training clips from Gordon on his YouTube. He's looking pretty good in training. He's back up in weight a little bit as well, getting some of that physicality back. So I don't see the match being overly competitive, but I'm looking forward to watching Gordon's showcase of his jiu-jitsu and whatever he's working on at the moment.
Something we can confirm is that the match is going to take place under a 15-minute time limit. We weren't sure on the last pod whether it would be the traditional 15 minutes that we see on Who's Number 1, or whether we would see Gordon rules, where Gordon often gets to increase the time limit of his matches because he likes long matches. So definitely 15 minutes. And yes, we both think Gordon's going to win, and it's going to be interesting to see how he goes about his business. So that said, Calum, of all the rest of the matches, which one are you looking forward to the most?
That is a difficult decision. I think this is the best Who's Number 1 card we've had in a long time. I think I'd mentioned before, potentially since we saw that really big card where they had the tournament for the 70 kilo title and for the middleweight title. That was an insane card, given the people that were vying for that 2 belts. However, this one is pretty good as well. So difficult to make a choice of which one I'm looking forward to the most, but I think the co-main event is very interesting. Got Fabricio Andrey versus Diego Pato. These guys kind of the same weight class, so they're the same weight class in ADCC, obviously, and they're like usually one weight class apart in IBJJF, but I don't think I can remember these two facing off in gi or no gi. Can you?
Not off the top of my head, Calum, and if you can't, then I'd be surprised if they have.
Yeah, so not a match I can remember in gi or no gi. So that's going to be really interesting. We have seen matches that they've kind of had opponents in common. So we've seen Pato beat Ethan Crelinsten, and we've seen Ethan beat Fabricio. We've seen Baby Shark beat both of them, as well as Pato beating Baby Shark. So interesting from that perspective. Obviously, Pato's biggest weapon in this is likely to be his leg locks. We're likely going to see him pull guard against Fabricio. We saw Baby Shark, who was Fabricio's teammate at the time, heel hook Fabricio in trials before the last World. So potentially there's an opportunity there for Pato to get hold of the legs. Pato probably regarded as a better leg locker than Baby Shark. So we've got that aspect, but physically, Fabricio is very difficult to deal with, very explosive. I think as well, especially in no-gi, he'll be quite hard for Pato to tangle up, but I think if he does tangle Fabricio up, then he will be in some trouble. Two guys that are really physical for the weight class as well. Fabricio, like I said, very explosive, very fast, and then Pato, very strong. There was a video put out recently. It seems to be a bit of a trend in some gyms, but they get one of those grip testing machines. So they did that in AOJ, and Guy went around testing everyone. and Pato's grip strength was pretty much the same as Tainan's, who's like several weight classes above him. So I think physically they're going to be pretty well matched, even though like slightly different attributes. Fabricio obviously amazing passing, amazing takedowns, and Pato with an amazing guard and amazing submission attacks. I would go slightly more towards Pato, just given off of the rule set and how it will be judged. I think he's more likely to get a finish as well. I don't see Fabricio really finishing Pato, especially because I don't think Pato will stand with him much, but really interested to see how the match goes. And I think it's one of these matches that I'm surprised we've not seen, given that these two guys are quite close in weight to each other.
Okay, so while you were swithering over whether to pick that match or another one, what was the other match that was under consideration for being the most interesting to you?
There's probably about 3 other ones, to be honest. The other 3 I'm really looking forward to is Tainan versus J-Rod.
Let's start with that then.
Okay, let's go with that.
Okay, what do you think about it?
So I think I'm pretty confident Tainan's going to win the match, but I think it'll be an exciting match because, one, the people involved, like Tainan is really in a boring match, gi or no gi, and then J-Rod is pretty much never in a boring match. Given how we've seen Tainan do against Taza and other people that are kind of similar level to J-Rod in no-gi, I think Tainan is going to be pretty dominant. I think he will likely stand with J-Rod. J-Rod just beat his teammate, Jonnatas Alves, but I think in no-gi, Tainan's shown himself to be a lot better so far with kind of what they've displayed. I think he'll stand a bit with J-Rod. Be interested to see how that goes. Obviously, J-Rod's got more experience in the stand-up, but seeing Tainan stand up against Oliver Taza, I wouldn't be surprised if he was able to get to a single leg or an arm drag or anything and put him down. And I think once he does get on top, it will be quite one-sided from there. But we could see J-Rod be really scrappy. We've seen him in a lot of matches not do so well in the first half of the match and then really bring out in the second match. So we'll maybe see some of that, some crazy scrambles where he can get to some good positions. But I think it'll be a very exciting match overall, even though I heavily favour Tainan in that match. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the only time I've really seen Tainan under pressure was when he lost to Jansen Gomez last year in the IBJJF Worlds. And I don't think Jay is quite as good as Jansen is, but he does pose a similar kind of problem in terms of that explosive, sporadic movement. So
I don't think he's quite as big or like physical as Jansen as well.
Yeah. But I'm looking for ways that Tainan could potentially lose.
Yeah.
So all I'm thinking is that because Jansen had those moments in the match against him and was ultimately able to come out on top, maybe it could be a thing where if Tainan is going to lose, it will be against like a player that can be scrappy in a couple of exchanges, and that's enough to eke out a victory. But I do agree that if Tainan gets to impose his will and control in any position, then I can't see J-Rod shifting him from there. The only thing if Tainan goes for a submission and then J-Rod's able to get out and counter, which he's very good at, but I think the way Tainan attacks, it's unlikely that he's going to put himself into like a position where he's going for an armbar and J-Rod can counter. I don't really see Tainan finishing like that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Tainan's weakness, we've kind of seen at black belt, aside from getting DQ'd, is, yeah, like you said, against Jansen and against that match against Mika when Mika was a brown belt, it's just when he can't really get on top and get his passing going. I think when he gets his passing going, not really seen anyone being able to stop it. So, like, with him on top, he's pretty much going to beat everyone. We might see an exception to that in future, but so far we've not really. So yeah, if he's able to negate the sweeps of Tainan or be able to stand with him and not get taken down, that might be a serious issue for him. I think, though, as well, it's worth highlighting, like we did with the Taza match, that obviously we've got Tainan coming over from the gi. But if you just look at these two in overall grappling pedigree, like they're definitely not on the same level. Like Tainan is multiple-time world champion, multiple-time Pan Am, Europe champion, etc. And J-Rod hasn't really won anything huge except the trials when he qualified to ADCC. So like an overall grappling kind of pedigree, Tainan is like definitely way higher than J-Rod. We'll just see how much the kind of gi versus no gi dynamic plays into the match.
Okay, now let's just touch on a couple of changes on the card as well. So there's a match with Jacob Couch, who was scheduled to be against Francisco Lowe, but is now against Jonnatas Gracie. So what do you think about this new matchup for Jacob, Calum?
Yeah, this is interesting. So I think these two, it's interesting with ADCC because it's obviously quite a weight disparity. So there might be some guys at 77 that are like very big for the weight class and don't really want to go up to 88, and then there might be guys at 88 aren't that big and they don't want to make the cut to 77. But these two guys, ADCC wise, are different weight classes. So Couch winning the trials at 88 kilos and Jonnatas giving some good performances at 77, which led to him getting an invite. I think at that 77 weight class, one of Jonnatas' biggest assets definitely was his physicality. He looked very strong, very immovable when he got on top. I think Couch, though, as well, is also very physical for his weight class. So we'll see how much that plays into it. Couch coming from a bigger weight class. Maybe the size discrepancy won't be that big when we see them next to each other, but that's definitely the first thing that comes to my mind. I think, though, I'm definitely favouring Couch in this. I think Jonnatas' style, he very much goes into the guard and engages with his passing, and I think against a guy like Couch, who's so statically strong and good at dragging your legs into things and locking up close guard and going for things, I definitely see him dragging Jonnatas into some dangerous positions quite early on and managing to get to his finishing positions from there.
I think that's a fair assessment, Calum. I favour Couch by getting into the legs as well. Anyone looking for conflict, you've come to the wrong podcast.
Yeah.
Dead being as we go through this card. The other match with a change, Luke Griffith had to drop out. Javier Zaruski is taking his place, and that is against Victor Hugo. Now,
yeah,
I don't know a lot about Javier. We're going to mention him a couple of times on this podcast because he's now entered the ranks of the ADCC, and we're going to give a quick update on the changes to a couple of divisions that have happened since our last podcast. But in this match, Calum, against Victor Hugo, what do you see happening?
Yeah, so same as you, I didn't know a lot about this guy, just having a look through his Instagram at the moment, as I'm sure you can see on screen. So it looks like he is a no-gi black belt world champion, so that's a good start. I think Victor Hugo, as well as a no-gi black belt world champion, I think he got double gold one of the years. So it's really hard to say what I expect in this match, given that we don't really know a lot about Victor's opponent. However, just going off of the caliber of Victor and the kind of performances he's had lately, I definitely have to favour him. It's hard to say stylistically what's going to happen in that match because we don't really know much about his opponent, but yeah, I have to favour Victor in that match.
Yeah. Let's say there's 3 more matches on the main card we're going to touch on before we get on to the updates with the ADCC and CJI, and then we're going to round off the podcast with a quick review of the Polaris event that happened at the weekend in the UK. So let's talk about a match with 2 faves of the Jiu Jitsu Oracle, Joseph Chen against Elijah Dorsey. Calum?
Yeah, so 2 trials winners from this year. Even though Jozef will be moving over to CJI, he won the European trials, and Elijah won the North American trials. So this match, very interesting. The big thing for me in this is with the six, obviously Jozef has a really good guard. We've seen him submit some really good people from the bottom and do some good things from the bottom, but I think he's mostly known for his guard passing, and then like secondary to that, his wrestling is really good, but I think Elijah's wrestling is also very, very good, and he's very, very physical and hard to move about or do anything with. We saw that with him against Nicky Ryan. Obviously, training room's a different situation to compete in, but I think whenever we see Jozef and Nicky roll with each other, I think Nicky definitely looks like he has the better wrestling. So interested to see in this whether Jozef will stand with Elijah and how that goes. I think if he gets on top of Elijah, he can definitely pass his guard. I think he's got some of the best passing in his weight class. The question is whether he will be able to get on top, and if he's on bottom, will he be able to do anything to Elijah? Because we know when Elijah is on top of someone, he is an absolute nightmare to do anything to. Very good at just getting planted into his passing positions. Very hard to move about or score or do anything to. And then solid passing when he kind of grinds his opponents down from that solid posture. So that's the kind of big question mark to me in this, is whether Jozef will stand with him, whether he can stand with him and take him down, or whether he's going to play guard. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it is a battle of like who can get on top. If Elijah's on bottom, I wonder how he's going to sweep Jozef.
Yeah, we don't see a lot of his guard game because his wrestling is so good. So that would be interesting. But I would favour Jozef to get the guard pass. His guard passing is very good, but yeah, we don't know if he's going to get there or not.
Yeah, and then I think there will be time in the match on the feet, and I would give the edge to Elijah there.
Yeah.
So I think it's a match that it can be like a variety of positions can happen. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a bit of both guys on the bottom, a bit of some wrestling. I think if Elijah gets on top of Jozef, he can definitely rack up some good time there.
Yeah.
So maybe Elijah by decision, based on the fact that like he'll be on top for like a good proportion of the match, but I think there'll be other bits in the match that will be more action packed, and then like maybe guys like maybe if Jozef gets to top, Elijah will just get back to his feet rather than sweep, and then try and wrestle, and then like maybe Jozef will pull off that if he can't get the takedown, but then he's got the problem with Elijah being on top of him. So I mean, it really could go either way. I'd favour Elijah by decision, but definitely an exciting match. And just while we're here, there's another exciting match for Jozef that's going to come hot on the heels of this, because he's taking on Andy Varela on Sunday, June the 23rd. And that's an interesting match because both of them are going to be in the Craig Jones Invitational as well. But very different style matchup for Jozef going up against Andy, who is really all action, and the action was all over the place, as opposed to Elijah, who can be more accustomed to keeping the match in one place, particularly if he's on top and you're not able to move. So
yeah, so definitely both in the ballpark as far as like where they're at, both winning trials. Some opponents in common. We saw Jozef beating Tommy in the trials, and we saw Tommy, after being in some deep trouble with Elijah, beating Elijah, but then we've seen Elijah beating Nicky Ryan, and Nicky Ryan definitely seems to get the better of Jozef in training anyway. So yeah, interested to see how this plays out in the competition.
Well done, the matchmakers, for coming up with this match. Okay, couple of matches left on the main card. Let's talk about the women first. Ana Rodrigues against Adele Fornerino.
Yeah, this is an interesting match. Not seen much of Adele outside of her A game, her really dangerous guard, good arm bars and leg locks, but I think that is something that she can catch a lot of people with. I think Ana Rodrigues, a bit more well-rounded, a bit more positional, and definitely a lot more experience. So I think that's how we're going to see the match. Probably seen Adele pulling guard, going for her dangerous submission attacks off of her back, and then we'll see Ana trying to play her top game and get her passing game going. So I think if it gets finished early, it's going to be Adele taking the match. If not, I think Anna's experience and passing is going to be able to navigate through Adele's guard and get the decision victory. If not, kind of get her into like a pinning situation to get a submission or maybe take the back. So that's how I kind of view this match, but I think it's very exciting from a stylistic point of view. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a disparity in experience. Obviously, A-Rod is an incredibly seasoned competitor, and Adele's kind of come on to the scene at this level in recent times. As you said, big threat from the guard. If I was A-Rod, I'd be trying desperately to stay out of the closed guard. I think if she can avoid that, then she will have a good chance to either pass or like take the back in a scramble or something like that. I think her game's like more expansive than Adele's, but I think Adele is super dangerous, so she just has to tread carefully, particularly like in the early stages of the match where, you know, Adele could pull to like an aggressive close guard, and then, you know, you can get bogged down there. And not only can you get bogged down there, but if you make a mistake, you can leave a limb that can be snatched up. So favour A-Rod, but again, another match where, even although we are leaning towards one player, it's definitely like in the offering that either could win. So again, hats off to FloGrappling for putting together a good match. And last match on the main card that we'll talk about, DeAndre Corby, one of your boys, against Ethan Crelinsten. I think the big question is, how's DeAndre going to adapt to the Who's Number One environment? Calum, what do you think?
Yeah, this is debatably my match I'm most looking forward to. Like I say, there's a few on here that I'm really looking forward to. Looking forward to the card in general, but this one, definitely. I think these two in their weight class and just in general are two of the most well-rounded guys out there. Both amazing from standing, amazing guard passing, amazing guard, both really well versed with leg locks, both got amazing back control, both got amazing pinning. So I think overall they're both amazing, both really well rounded. I see the biggest difference being in their kind of style and physicality. So Ethan is very much chaotic, very much movement based, loves to scramble, loves to keep things moving and tries to come out on top in scrambles and take the back. Whereas DeAndre is very much the opposite. He likes to kill all the movement, stop you from moving, get on top, and just kind of grind out and get the pass from there and pin. So I think it's really interesting to see where they kind of go. I think Ethan has been a bit more insistent on wrestling as of late. We saw him pull guard against Fabricio and wrestle, but I think for the most part he likes to wrestle. DeAndre, very good wrestling as well, but he really doesn't mind sitting to guard. He's got a very good guard from there and very good at entering into the legs and sweeping from there. So like I say, I think skill-wise, they're like really well matched in every area, but I think their kind of philosophy for how they go about implementing those skills, as well as the physicality, kind of fast twitch versus slow twitch, seems to be the biggest difference in this match.
From a storyline perspective, it's interesting because DeAndre is very much on the up, a young up-and-comer, and Ethan is one of the more established names at this weight class. So be interesting to see how the match goes and whether DeAndre is going to be like, I think he will be, but a force at in these ranks for like a long time. It's a good match for him to get against like a veteran like Ethan, a match that he can win, and a match that if he does win, then he takes out someone who's got a big name in that division. Really interested to see how Ethan looks. To me, it doesn't feel like I've seen him compete loads of late. What do you think? Have I just been sleeping on him, or?
Oh, well, he had that match recently on Karate Combat, but I don't think that was like an overly competitive match. I don't think his opponent was really on his level. So, yeah, we saw him do the first trials alongside DeAndre. None of those guys managed to win that one, and then DeAndre won the second trials, and Ethan didn't compete in that one, I don't believe. And yeah, it doesn't seem like he's had that many matches here or there. He doesn't typically do tournaments outside of ADCC. Don't really see him doing the IBJJF If there's like a super fight tournament with some money on the line, we'll see him jump in. But yeah, I don't think I've seen him in a lot of matches as of late. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what kind of form he's in. Both these guys will be doing ADCC, given they're in the 66 kilo weight class. So potential opponents in ADCC, so it'll be interesting from that perspective as well. But just looking forward to seeing both of them displaying their well-rounded jiu-jitsu and seeing who comes out on top on that.
Yeah, and just on that weight class in the ADCC, possibly the most competitive weight class of them all. So, from look and a weight class that is likely to be dominated by Brazilians when it comes to who gets on the podium. So it'll be interesting to see if any non-Brazilians can disrupt that. And from that point of view, seeing how these two guys look when they square off and if they're in great form, that'll be good to see, because it would be nice if like we saw some other guys get into the mix in that under 66 weight class, but it's going to be really, really difficult. Now, on the ADCC and CJI, can we quickly talk about a couple of changes that we believe have happened? Okay, so first off, the last time we did the pod, Calum, we did a bit about how we're looking forward to seeing Adam Bradley in the ADCC because of what happened to him at the trials and how he might get a potential rematch with Michael Pixley. And then very quickly, Adam Bradley announced that he was doing CJI. So we'll come on to the CJI additions in a minute. But first off, in the under 99 division for the men, which those of you with computers, laptops, and not Spotify, you'll see that Calum has up. Although I believe it's an older version of the list that is currently on my phone. But Adam Bradley, not to worry, Adam Bradley's out, gone to CJI, and he's been replaced by Kyle Bain. And also in that division, we now have Javier Zaruski, which is interesting because it puts 17 people into that division. So I don't know if they're expecting someone to jump, but that's as it stands just now. And then the only other changes of late, Roosevelt Souza is in the over 99 division. And in the female categories, we have Kendall Rousing added to the female over 65. And Mackenzie Dern is out of the under 55. And we did a little bit on her in the last pod, and we were kind of surprised to see her name on there. So it seems that she's appeared and then disappeared, and nothing much has been said about it. Yeah, don't know why, but no Mackenzie Dern. So, any of those names that you want to comment on?
Not really. It's just a bit surprising from ADCC why they don't advertise what they're doing a little bit more. Some things just seem to go on the website. We've seen a super fight with Gordon and Felipe on the website. Nothing was said about it, then it was taken off. So it just seems a bit strange. But yeah, there's been some changes. So looking forward to seeing those guys in ADCC.
And we'll keep you up to date with all the changes as they happen, as we podcast. CJI, Calum. Not as many changes. We've talked about Adam Bradley jumping in. If you've not seen Adam Bradley's post about why he decided to make the switch, I recommend you go to his Instagram. Thought it was very thoughtful and well written, his explanation. So that's in the over 80 kilo category. And then we also have a very recent addition. I don't believe his name's on the graphic. Ignacio Santos, who had won South American trials, has decided at over 99 kilograms, has decided to go to CJI instead of doing the ADCC. And then a couple of interesting names at under 80. I don't think on our last pod we mentioned Andy Varela. If we did, then Andy Varela's in. If we didn't, then Andy Varela's in. So guaranteed to be some excitement with him competing. And mentioned that he's got a match against Jozef Chen coming up real soon. And then a name here that is very interesting and definitely going to bring something different to the table, and that is Jason Nolf. So, Calum, what do you make of these additions?
Yeah, I think Jason Nolf is a very interesting one. I really like that, and I think it's a bit of a throwback to some of the earlier ADCCs when it was almost like a UFC of grappling. We saw guys from different grappling disciplines competing against each other. So Jason Nolf, I think we recently saw him in a no-gi grappling match that he won. I think he hit a nice duck under and then won the match. After that, we've not seen much of him in Jiu-Jitsu, so it'll be interesting to see how his skills transfer over. I know that he has been training with some of the guys in Austin. I think he does some training with like the Tackett Bros, and I think he's done some stuff with the B team guys in their gym before, so I'm sure he's had plenty of rounds with some really high level guys, so it'd be cool to see how his game transfers into Nogi. But as well as that, we always speak about the really high level teams in Jiu-Jitsu being like AOJ and New Wave, and I think Penn State Wrestling is just one of the best programs in combat sports across the board, and that's what he comes from. So coming from a really high level team in wrestling, so we'll see how that plays into it. And as well as that, I think we've seen comments from his Penn State teammate or former Penn State teammate, because they're not there anymore, they're not in university, but Bo Nickel has expressed interest in it as well in a podcast, so maybe that'll be an announcement in the future that he would like a crack at that 1 million. So I think that's a really interesting name that's been thrown in there, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he does against some of the guys in that bracket.
Yeah, I believe Jason Nolf is a 3-time NCAA champ, so yeah. Fantastic pedigree. Bo Nickel, I did see that he wants to do it. I just wonder with his MMA aspirations whether he'll be able to do it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, but we see quite a lot of the time MMA guys doing jiu-jitsu, so obviously with the UFC contract they can't go and fight for Bellator or another promotion. However, they do seem to be able to do jiu-jitsu competitions. I think I remember Sean O'Malley even doing like a grappling industries a few years back, so maybe there's something in their contract about it, but it'll be a good chance for those guys to earn some money. And Bo Nickel is someone we've seen compete a little bit more in Jiu-Jitsu than Jason Nolf, and he's looked really, really good in the matches that I've seen. I remember a quintet match on Fight Pass when he was against Oliver Taza, and granted he's a bit bigger than Oliver Taza, but he looked amazing in that match, and that was a good few years ago, probably with very limited Jiu-Jitsu and MMA training. That match went to a draw because there was no sub, but Bo Nickel definitely got the better of Taza in that match. And then we've seen him against Gordon, but there wasn't much jiu-jitsu going on in that. He kind of just suplexed Gordon, and then Gordon submitted him. So I think that would be a really interesting name at over 80 kilos. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, the reason I use the word aspirations is because I don't know what he's got booked for the US. So I got a A match coming up. Then that's going to be difficult. But if he's got a bit of downtime, if he's got a clear run at it, then maybe he'll be able to jump in. Okay, so some extra names to CJI and ADCC, and then let's round off today's chat by looking at Polaris that happened in the UK at the weekend. Why don't we talk about the main event first? Because it wasn't the most exciting match, so I think our coverage of it will be quite short. It was Owen Livesey against Baki, MMA fighter, who was replacing Yoel Romero at short notice. And I believe Owen was announced as the victor on the night, but ultimately it was declared a draw. And it was a match where, like, despite Owen's best efforts, nothing really got going. And we even saw Owen pull guard to try and get something going. And Owen, being a former high-level judo practitioner, very much likes to keep it on the feet and score with throws. We've seen him adapt to no-gi jiu-jitsu very, very well. So a bit of a disappointment in the main event. What were your thoughts on it, Calum?
Yeah, so everyone was obviously very excited to see the match with Yoel Romero, which was cancelled because of weather reasons where Yoel was coming from. This guy was definitely able to hold his own against Owen, but coming from an entertainment perspective, definitely wasn't the most entertaining. He's very much being very defensive and backing up, and anyone that's done a bit of wrestling knows that if you're just kind of purely defensively focused and not really wanting to engage, even if someone is a bit better in the wrestling, it can be very hard for them to get anything going if your kind of only thought is to back up a bit and be super defensive. So yeah, a bit disappointing from an entertainment point of view in that match in the main event.
Okay, so there were entertaining matches on the card, though. What do you think the most entertaining one of the rest of the matches, Calum?
So let's just have a look at this poster again. So the one I was looking forward to the most was Mateusz versus Levi. I think that was a very interesting one to watch. Everyone was interested in watching that stylistically. Both guys known as guard players, both very good at the bolos, and then Mateusz with the leg locks as well. It had been speculated that we might see Levi come up and pass, and that was exactly what had happened. So the reason I found this quite interesting was we've not seen a lot of guys pass against Mateusz and not get dragged into his game. So we saw Mateusz get into the legs a couple times, and that's usually a wrap from there, but Levi was able to deal with it pretty early and free his knee and even counter with some bearing blows off of that. But most interesting, just the kind of posture he was adopting to not get dragged into Mateusz's game too much. It's very much tripod sort of posture from the open guard and from like knee cut sort of positions, leading with his head, keeping his hips and his legs back. So maybe that'll be a bit of a blueprint people can try and implement against Mateusz in the future, given that he's one of the scariest guys to compete against in that weight class. But we did see Mateusz come away with the decision in that match, just given that he got into his game a couple times and got a couple attacks off a little bit, even though not much happened in the match too much. But from like a study perspective, it was quite interesting, I thought.
Yeah, I think Mateusz's guard was very disciplined. Some good recoveries, high pummels, etc. So we normally look at Mateusz from an attacking perspective, but I thought he was very good defensively in this match against someone in Levi who's a great attacker in himself. So I'd love to see them compete against each other again. I think they're very evenly matched. It really could go either way. And if they compete against each other again, it'd be interesting to see the adjustments that both made in order to try and get the victory. Okay, another exciting match on the card was Stevie Ray against Jed Hugh. Calum, what did you think of that match?
Yeah, that match was really exciting. Jed obviously coming from a pure grappling background, and then Stevie coming from MMA. I think he was a bit bigger in the match. Definitely seemed like there was a bit of a physicality difference given the weight. I think I've seen Stevie post that he's walked around before at about 90 odd kilos, so carrying that sort of muscle, and we all know that MMA guys tend to be a bit better conditioned and a bit more physical than a lot of grappling athletes. So I think that played into the match, but really impressed with how Stevie was able to handle himself in all areas of the match. Jed, obviously known for his leg locks, was able to submit Paul Craig pretty much instantly with a leg lock, and we've seen Stevie in matches of his own go for leg locks, so we're expecting him to be somewhat well versed, but wherever it went in the match, leg locks or wherever, he was very comfortable in defending himself, and even towards the end of the match got some of his game going, got a pass on Jed and forced him to turtle, so that was his highlight for the match. But overall we saw Jed get the decision, and rightly so, because he was attacking for 90% of the match, getting his game going. Heading into the legs a few times, looked like it was quite close, but like I say, Stevie looked pretty comfortable defending from all positions. So very fun match, a lot of movement in the match, a lot of different exchanges. So that was definitely one of my favourite matches on the card.
Yeah, I just think any of the exchanges, the interactions, well, it was a little bit of back and forth. Jed seemed to get the better of most of them and sort of like come out on top, get to the better position. So a deserved victory for Jed. Ben Bennett against Santeri. Let's talk about that one, Calum.
Yeah, so we saw these two on the feet to start off with, if I remember correctly. I would have thought maybe Ben would have pulled Seems like his normal game is very submission heavy from his guard, but I think I remember Santiri pulling guard and getting to top or coming up on a wrestle up and getting to the back. But anyway, once he got to the back, which was relatively early in the match, that's pretty much just where it stayed. He was pretty clamped on from there. Ben's defense looked pretty good from just not getting submitted, that sort of perspective. But as far as getting out, he wasn't really able to get much going. And Santiri was able to get the decision in that match.
Yeah. Just when Santiri got... it's typical Santiri, when he gets to like a dominant position, he's pretty hard to shift from it. And looked really good on the back. So, a good win for Santeri. It was a good challenge for Ben. I mean, we saw Ben do really well at the most recent Euro trials, and he's going up against Santeri, who's one of the best grapplers in Europe at that weight class. So it was a good test for him. But Santeri, really good no-gi submission grappler. Just looks like a real tough proposition given his ability to wrestle and stay safe and get to dominant positions and really like wear you out. So good victory for Santeri. Helena Cravar against Jessica Tortilla. Helena taken to a decision this time, which is something that we don't always see. I think we did a recent podcast about the 80% club, and we were looking at grapplers who have more than 80% of their wins come by way of submission. And I would think Helena would probably be in there. While not quite on the list in terms of being at the true elite level of the sport, because she's still an up-and-comer. And we were looking at guys like Gordon Ryan and Mika Galvao. Helena's submission ratio is very, very high, but taken to a decision.
Just throw this in there because I saw it the other day. Mateusz Szczecinski's submission rate. So he's had 50 wins at black belt. I think he's 50-9, and 48 of those wins by submission. So that's like 96%. So that's pretty crazy. But yeah, same thing applies to Helena. She was attacking a lot in this match, definitely hunting the submission. She just didn't quite get the execution off. She had some good attempts at some outside heel hooks, as well as jumping on some front headlock attacks and some back attacks, but wasn't quite able to execute on those submission attempts. But overall, very dominant, and was definitely hunting for the submission the whole match, even if she didn't end up getting it. Yes.
And last match on the main card, we're going to talk about another one of your boys, Calum.
Yeah.
Younger, another one of your faves. He was up against Sam Quinn. Tell us how it went.
Yeah, so I was really happy to see Ellis back competing. He's been out for a little while now with a back injury, so didn't seem like that was hindering him at all in the match. Very similar match to one he had with Ben Bennett a while ago, where he was kind of just mounted on Ben the whole match. He didn't manage to get the sub in that, but in this match, he kind of shot in and got to a sort of rear body lock position, and Sam was able to actually throw Ellis from there with that sort of like grapevine Harayagoshi counter throw that a lot of people are doing in Jiu Jitsu at the moment. I've seen Ellis post before, though, that his best position is being in a guillotine, so he's very comfortable defending from there, was able to get up on top and pass. And for the majority of the match, he was just completely controlling Sam, going between the mount and the back. I think his mount and back control is really, really solid when he gets there on someone. When he gets to like that range where he's like chest to chest, super close with someone, he's just like an anaconda. He's just like constantly like squeezing himself in, keeping himself at that range, and it was just like a complete masterclass in controlling from there. Saw the commentator saying that he was looking for Ellis to push the pace for the sub, and commentator's curse, Ellis managed to get the choke from the back about 10 seconds after that comment. So really good performance from Ellis, and I'm excited to see him against some big names in Polaris in the future.
Agreed. And I think I've mentioned before, talking about Ellis, how impressive his sweep game is and how he uses it to get chest to chest top position. Kind of reminds me of Adam Wardzinski now.
Yeah.
He does sweep to top. He's very deep into top position. chest to chest. Opponents' arms are often up high over their shoulders, etc. So I think Ellis is brilliant at that, and he's really added that top game to an already good game that he had. And yeah, one of the leading lights in the UK, and terrific to see him back competing, and hopefully can go on and take out some more big names in the future. So we'll be back with our next pod, which will be wrapping up the Who's Number One event. But we're not going to be back until a few days after it happened, because Calum and I are off to Manchester. Straight Blast Gym UK is having their annual camp, and we're going to be doing a weekend of jiu-jitsu. So we'll have to get back and then watch all the matches before we share our thoughts. And then we'll also be keeping up to date with any moves that happen with the ADCC and CJI. And then we're going to get into our tier lists for both events, where we're going to rank the competitors, slotting them into different categories and letting you know who we think will do what in both events. And they are going to be graphic heavy, so definitely recommend watching them on YouTube to get the best experience possible. But for now, we will take a little break for a few days, go and do some jiu-jitsu in Manchester, then come back, watch the Who's Number One event, and let you know what we think.